We're real pleased that in addition to Nautel, Broadcast Depot has joined us as a co-sponsor. Broadcast Depot is located down there in Florida, and they have specials every week. Barry Shelley is often with us on Thursday, and I've found them to be a very good source for not just getting the right equipment, but the right advice. And that's really something that we want to have. Is we're buying something that we're ourselves not fully familiar. These are the guys that can help us. And they've got a wide range, as any good rep firm does, of products. And they've always got something on special. So that's good. If you haven't seen it in the newsletter or on the front page there's an article about when and why to change your password. And a lot of people don't realize this. They could have this huge, complex password made up of numbers and letters and stars and exclamation points and phrases, and it won't do you a bit of good if the place you have logged on to has been hacked and somebody, having used the password has been discovered by a hacker when they try to unhash the password files. And so it's very easy if someone's really determined to come after you. And so I offer this article to use for yourself, to share with your IT department if they don't know. I'm sure they do know. But as I wander around, and I'm sure as you wander around, there are too many places where there's Post-its on the screen with this long, crazy password that nobody can remember. And that is a certain level of security. But if a site that you're on has been hacked and you reuse passwords, bad stuff can happen. Meanwhile, maybe you want to change your operating system. And that's our theme for today. I'm really thrilled to have Michael Stauber and Chris Gebhardt with us. These guys are among the brains behind BlueOnyx. Now, BlueOnyx is a GUI that fits on top of a Linux variation. And they're going to explain to us how this works and why it works, and maybe answer some questions you might have. Because a lot of people say, I sure want to get away from Windows. I sure want to try something, but I'm so afraid of learning Linux. Here's an easy way in. Michael, could we turn to you first?
Yes, of course. Yes, BlueOnyx is a GUI-based web interface which allows easy administration of a Linux server specialized for web hosting. So if you want to run your own web pages, want your users to be able to log in, to read their webmail, have spam filtering, and the ability to publish and run complex web pages with database backends, then BlueOnyx is exactly for you. Even if you don't know that much of Linux, it's very easy to install. Just pop in a DVD and hit return twice, and it will install the entire system ready to run on your PC or server. And then all the administration can be done via a GUI-based web interface in your browser.
Michael, let me ask you a question as we start to roll through this. First of all, do you want to take questions as they come up, or would you like people to put their hand up and wait a bit, or just exactly?
I'm open for suggestions. I'll take it as they come.
Okay. And Chris is with us too. Chris is the CEO of VertBiz. VertBiz is the company that hosts us here on the BDR and oldradio.com, the broadcast list. And as a result, he has great experience in dealing with different users, different servers, and what you might need. So let's start off here. Michael, and the BlueOnyx sits on top of a Linux type distribution,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, it's a Red Hat Enterprise Linux clone. BlueOnyx runs on Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9 or 8 or 7. Those are the versions that are still in support, or on the respective clones. That could be CentOS, that could be Alma Linux, or it could be Rocky Linux. Those are the most common clones of the Red Hat Enterprise Linux. In the latest version, Enterprise Linux 9, it will be supported for many years. And as long as the operating system receives security updates, BlueOnyx as well will publish security updates and enhancements for the respective GUI interface. We have been around since 2008. Back then, BlueOnyx was available on CentOS 5. And as you can see from the numbers from 5 to 9, we've gone through a couple of iterations. And every time a new Red Hat Enterprise Linux comes out, we get ready, dig in, and prepare our latest release of BlueOnyx based on that new Enterprise Linux.
Now, some people would say that they know Ubuntu or other variations of Red Hat or whatever. Now, sometimes these become very difficult as firms try to commercialize them. And BlueOnyx sits on a free version of Linux, correct?
That is correct. You can run it on an official Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So you can get the full support of the Red Hat licensing if you buy the full license. But most people choose the free versions because not only for the price, because they don't need that kind of support which Red Hat may offer, but it's available if they want it. And the other thing is Red Hat is also a bit stricter as far as certain export regulations go. So we have clients all over the world, and some of them are not that comfortable with dealing directly with US-based enterprises.
So if someone wanted to get started now, they would go down to where on the web?
www.blueonyx.it. That's our official webpage. And on there is a download section where you can download the ISO images of BlueOnyx or virtual machine images, which allow an easy installation with just a couple of clicks.
All right, that sounds good. Can you show us something? Are you set up for that?
Yes, let me try to share my screen. I definitely have too many windows open, I see. Okay.
There's a little green box there. There you go. You got it.
There we go. Okay, this is the login screen to our latest BlueOnyx 5.2.11. That's the latest model. We're logging in as admin user, so we have full privileges on this one. Privilege levels, the admin user can do everything. An owner of a virtual site, he may only administer his own virtual site. A member of a virtual site may only manage his own account. So there are several graduations of user level management, each isolated against each other. And so you can give your end user login to the GUI interface as well, and he will only be able to see and manage his own stuff. Let's go back to the server management. This is where the administrator of the server can configure all the different services which we allow to manage. For example, we have the Apache and the Nginx web server, which can be configured here. The email server can be configured. We have OpenDKIM, blacklisting, and a lot of basic settings which allow to enable HTTPS email connections for IMAP, POP3, all that kind of stuff. We also have an interface which allows to manage DNS records. DNS is usually a complicated topic, and we try to make it as easy as possible for both the server administrators and the end users to manage their own DNS records if they want to. Dynamic DNS, it's possible that you have your BlueOnyx on non-static IP address, so the IP address may change, and you can set up dynamic DNS, and that way the server will always be associated and reachable via its domain name, even if the IP address changes. SNMP for monitoring, shell, and FTP access can be managed and configured. The MySQL or MariaDB database can be configured. And there are lots of security options as well. For example, we can check how many failed logins this server has seen. None, because it's behind a pretty good firewall, which kind of blocks all access except mine. Running processes can be checked and even managed to some degree. I could, for example, kill certain processes if I wanted to. There's a configuration for the built-in firewall. There are many things. There are also statistics about disk usage and memory usage and all that kind of stuff, email traffic. We kind of got it all. And let's check the site management, because that is where it really shines. This is the list of virtual sites that exists. This site here has one user, he's the administrator, can administer his DNS, can administer FTP and email. And different PHP versions are available at the same time. Email can be managed here. Check. All right, here's what I want to show you. Shell and FTP access. It is possible to allow site administrators and end users direct access to the command line of the server, which is not such a good idea because of security implications. So usually you can turn it off. That's the safest method. Or you can set up CH-rooted jails. So when the user enters that jail, he will be isolated and can only see his own stuff, but nothing else. That is usually the safest approach. And we also have a web-based console, which can be used to log into the server. I'm not doing that right now. And this page is dedicated to software updates and packages which we have in our BlueOnyx shop, because BlueOnyx is modular. In our shop, people can buy or rent software packages like spam filter, extra PHP versions, all kinds of web applications which are easily integrated into the GUI interface. For example, very popular is WordPress. People want to run their own WordPress installation. They can buy the package in the shop and can deploy it to individual virtual sites on a BlueOnyx with just a few clicks. And we offer many web applications in similar style, content management systems, stuff like that. And this third-party packages from the shop are directly available for installation via this third-party software. At this time, this installation is connecting to NewLink, which is our update services, from which it grabs a list of all the packages that are available. There we go. This is a small example of all the extra packages which are available. OwnCloud, Nextcloud, if you want to do your own web-based file hosting, file sharing via phones and tablets and cellulars and workstations. It's perfect for it. Different PHP versions, wikis, different shop systems and content management systems. If we can package it, we usually have it in the shop. So it's a long list of things that are available. And this page also has a built-in support interface for bug reports, support requests, for installing updates. And lastly, there's Active Monitor. That's a component which monitors all the services on the server. For example, this here tells me there are software packages available or updates for packages which I don't have installed yet. If one of the important services on this server would fail, Active Monitor would send me a notification email and would highlight the fault here in this interface in red like it did here. That's a small overview over what BlueOnyx looks like. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to hear them.
Michael, let's talk about someone who wants to get started. Yeah, they want to start. There's two branches here. One, their own computer, or to have a server located elsewhere, even a virtual server. And invite Chris to comment on this if he would like to. What's the very bottom rung here? How expensive is it for someone to get started?
Not that much.
I see the donate box right here on the screen.
Yes.
And that tends to mean that you don't have high prices.
That is true. Our client base is all over the world. And some of them are in countries where money isn't available in that abundant fashion. For example, I'm currently based in Colombia, although I originally are from Germany. And for prices that are that somebody in the US or in Europe would consider low, people have to work a whole day here. So our prices are, I would say, pretty fair for everybody. And we do have a commercial aspect where we sell our packages, and in a way, it doesn't really cover all the expenses. For example, the web hosting, the amount of servers that we need to run all the different variants of BlueOnyx and provide packages for it and building environments and stuff like that. That would easily go into pretty big figures. But fortunately, from day one that our project has existed in 2008, Chris from WordBiz has been a very gracious host who provided us with everything that we could ever need. So if you need reliable, dependable web hosting or server collocation, Chris is the man to go to. I absolutely recommend him.
So if somebody really wanted the very, very basic thing, and they want to just see if they can figure it out, why it doesn't cost them anything, does it, to download the very basic?
BlueOnyx is very friendly. It can be run in a virtual environment. For example, what you've seen here displayed in my browser, it's one virtual server that runs on a big server hosted at Chris. There are 30 other virtual servers on the same box. On a workstation, on the laptop, simply install an easy virtualization software like VirtualBox or VMware, whatever, doesn't really matter. And then download the BlueOnyx ISO image and install from that ISO image into a virtual server on your laptop, on your PC, and try and give it a test run. If you don't like it, throw the virtual server away. Won't cost you anything, won't hurt anybody. Or if you have an old PC or laptop, you could wipe the disk clean and install BlueOnyx on it. And we do have a couple of clients or a user base, a small user base, who simply run BlueOnyx at home in the basement or closet or home office and make it available via their broadband internet that they have at home. Others have them in collocation centers like with Chris or in other places, or even run their own hosting centers. We have pretty much everything in regards to user base.
That's great. And of course, my situation, our situation, the BDR is being hosted at VirtBiz, where Chris runs the shop. And you can have a complete server, of course, or he'll sell you part of a server, a virtual server, which I think is a real great way. Chris, would you like to jump in? Did we lose Chris? I think we may have.
Looks like he's just not, he's muted.
He's muted, yeah.
Well, let's see if Chris gets back to us in just a second. Michael, in the meantime, we have a question.
Oh, the unmute button. I see.
There you go.
This technology is hard. That's why BlueOnyx tries to make it easy.
Good.
See what I've done there. So yeah, Barry, to speak to your question, absolutely. We've been using BlueOnyx, as Michael mentioned, from the very start. We first came on board when BlueOnyx came into being. And I think it's maybe important to back up just a half step and mention that BlueOnyx comes from a very mature software base. It's been continually updated, but BlueOnyx sprang forth from the Blue Quartz open source project, which itself sprang forth from the Cobalt Rack servers that we first became familiar with in the mid to late 90s. And then that became, that was then purchased by Sun Microsystems and later spun off into an open source project. So from the very beginning, we've been toying around with this platform in one form or another. I've never seen it get as good as it is now, and that's a pretty exciting thing. A lot of the use cases that we have for it, we've been hosting commercial websites. So in a production capacity, on a commercial basis, we've been hosting websites for our clients on a BlueOnyx control panel for many years. We've used this as an open source alternative to cPanel, which is perhaps the de facto standard in hosting control panels. BlueOnyx does everything that cPanel does. It just does it at a much lower cost.
Now, Chris, you have a whole plant there. You have two sources of power and generators, as I remember, so that your downtime is almost zero.
That's certainly the idea.
And how do your users find BlueOnyx to be working for them? What have you observed?
My observation is that most everybody finds it pretty easy to get around in. Certainly as an alternative to having to roll your own LAMP server, which would be from a command line, installing the correct Apache and PHP versions. And now do you need a database? Well, now we have to install a database daemon or server on top of that. And now we have to make that interface with whatever version of PHP we've chosen. Oh, and then do you want email? That's a whole different ball of wax. What BlueOnyx does really well is it packages all of those things together into one place. And you don't have to know a lick of code. You don't have to know a lick of command line. If the word Linux makes you frightened and runs for the hills, don't be too intimidated because everything is controlled through the GUI interface.
Now, would there must be some Windows type overlay that goes on top of BlueOnyx. Do you have a recommendation, Chris, Michael, either one of you?
No, you absolutely. All you need to manage it is a browser. And that can be any browser. It can be a browser on your phone. It can be a Firefox, a Chrome, a Safari, whatever. It will just work.
I think, and if I could, I think that, when we're touching upon a use case or what you would do with BlueOnyx, how would it work for you? Understand you may have your corporate website hosted at a professional hosting provider. So BlueOnyx arguably may not be for you in that capacity. But if you are someone who is using, say, OneDrive or Dropbox for your file storage and file sharing, as Michael mentioned just a minute ago, there are open source alternatives such as OwnCloud, Nextcloud. You could ostensibly bring that service in-house. If your office has a virtual server available, or even just an old desktop that's sitting around collecting dust, chances are BlueOnyx is going to run on top of that and run very efficiently. It's an extremely lightweight platform. With a matter of a few clicks through the BlueOnyx GUI, you can set up a new website. That website could be running something such as OwnCloud, which is a file sharing and a collaborative platform. You could have that up and running just through a few clicks, all automated installers.
That's great. And as I mentioned, you host me. You host
Sure.
the broadcast list. You host the BDR, and we're grateful for the service that you have. Now,
well, just let me take a quick sip of water from my BDR.net mug here.
Oh, I love you, man. That's great.
Oh, so tasty. Yeah.
One of the things that Chris does that you may wish, if you want to set up a server, for instance, and you don't need to have it right by your kneecaps, is he's got the full plant there and he can run it. They have technical support 24/7. And then the question comes up, what about user support? There is a user manual on the BlueOnyx website. And there is also a community which will answer questions. And I've also found that Michael himself, the key programmer, is very approachable. And if you have a question on any level, he will take the time and answer it.
We also do offer support contracts for clients who need monitoring of their servers and need short availability in case of emergencies.
Speaking of where to put it, we have a question here in the chat box. Will this run on a Raspberry Pi?
Yes and no. As you know, the Raspberry Pi, it's not really PC-based hardware. We do have a hobbyist on the BlueOnyx mailing list who once rolled up a Raspberry Pi version of BlueOnyx 5 to 10. That's one version prior than the most actual model. But as it's a hobbyist project, we don't really fully endorse it. We don't build it. We don't know in what state it currently is because we don't have a Raspberry Pi and cannot provide the VM updates directly for it.
Sort of an alpha arrangement, if you will.
Yes.
And the interesting thing, yeah, if I may, the interesting thing, the Raspberry Pi is an amazing hobbyist platform. And they're a lot of fun and there are a lot of things that you can do with them. In a case like this, where firing up a virtual server on hardware that is already in existence, or even if you wanted to pick up a commercialized cloud-hosted instance, such as what the BDR.net runs on, you're talking about maybe $20 or $30 a month. And then that's hosted in a commercial data center with enterprise SLAs and your guaranteed uptime. So I think we found that in most cases, somebody who's looking to self-host is also not wanting to make the compromise on a hobbyist platform in most cases.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to have the horsepower to do what you want to do. And you may want to add something. You may want to add web pages. You may want, as we run now on actually on WordPress, the BDR is on WordPress to reach the smartphone folks. and it's all sitting right on top of the BlueOnyx, and probably, and I know you're gonna grimace when I say this, but yeah, once in a while I go in the command line, but I don't have to do that very often. I do a couple of things that are non-standard with the broadcast list. Just to give you a very quick example, we do a patch where I can take incoming email and I can get rid of disclaimers that those IT people slap on there. You know, like if you've got this, delete it immediately and don't read it. Or the odd person who, and we get one of these every couple of days. Somebody will take a digest version and quote the whole digest to say, yes, I agree. And so we just have a little script that stops that. And I stay away from most everything else.
Well, I think in large part, that's because you don't need to manipulate things by hand when so many of the controls are already in that web-based GUI.
And if they aren't, Michael is right on top of it. Recently, the Gmail and Yahoo idiots out there went crazy with this DKIM and DMARC garbage, and all sorts of emails started bouncing all over the world. And Michael has programmed into the BlueOnyx a system to do all this DKIM and DMARC material so that your email will not be blocked by Google and AOL and those.
Yeah, that's how it works. We do have a very active community, and sometimes people come to me with wishes or enhancement requests or suggestions. And at times, like this DKIM stuff, I personally think DKIM, DMARC, all that stuff is snake oil. It's designed for a specific purpose, and that is not really helping to the email to flow. But that's a different topic. People wanted it. They wanted it in BlueOnyx, and Chris wrote a very good guide how people could set it up manually and published it on the WordPress wiki. And I looked at it and said, okay, I can do that. And I followed this guide and integrated it into the BlueOnyx GUI interface. So now with a couple of clicks, people can manage their own DKIM keys, and it gets directly published to the DNS. And with just a few clicks, they have their fully working DKIM integration.
That's really good. And it just is the point that as things evolve, and they do,
absolutely,
Michael is there, and he's more than willing to attack things that many people request.
Which is one of the beauties to an open source project, then, of course. A commercial closed source project, like think anything that Microsoft or Apple would be releasing. They've got entire floors full of developers, and sometimes spread across continents, who are working on very complicated issues all the time. And the crux is that when you need to respond very quickly to any issue, a given issue, sometimes all of that infrastructure can become a little bit unwieldy. And I think that the open source nature of BlueOnyx and the core group of developers, with Michael as the lead, really helps the flexibility and the ability to jump on something. If we see a need, that can be quickly and easily fulfilled.
Yes, I often see Chris answering just as often as Michael does when people raise questions. And so you have that quick response to whatever you might need.
Yes, and there's also the third man, Greg, in Australia. Greg and I, we both started offering commercial solutions or commercial add-ons to the BlueOnyx predecessor. And back then there was a small network of IT specialists who kind of were competing with each other. And one of these days we virtually sat together and worked things out and decided to work together. That's what also created BlueOnyx. And that also formed a long-lasting business relationship. And this group of developers is until today supporting BlueOnyx, making small or big contributions in different areas. We also have a Rickard Ossa in Sweden. He runs a commercial fork of BlueOnyx designed around the Asterix voice over IP telephony. So you use a modified BlueOnyx to manage voice over IP installations. He often has suggestions or code improvements as well. And recently we signed on a new developer in Austria. That was a guy who appeared on the mailing list, and that's the guy that every programmer, every developer loves. He not only comes with a problem, he also says, hey, in line 512 of this module, you have to insert these 3 lines of codes. And his solutions were always spot on, absolutely ready to publish. Not one mistake. The logic behind it was solid. And after a couple of these instances where we really had to a project along, I said, look, you have to sign up with us or we really have to abduct you.
Yes.
So we welcomed him as our newest co-developer of BlueOnyx. That's how it works in the open source community.
And the nice thing, you see Michael, you see Chris. Greg is in the middle of the night in Australia, but it's not a group that's going to disappear and run away. You've not only got to see them and get to know them a little bit, but you know what they're doing, and it's not secretive. It's not something that suddenly shows up, which I think is important to know. Michael mentioned that the website BlueOnyx.it, www.blueonyx.it, and this is that home page there, and you can see that there's everything that you might want to know to get started. And if there is a need for more information, Michael will tell you, Chris will tell you, and many of the users will tell you. Any questions? Anyone have a question that they'd like to pose to Michael or Chris? Please either press your space bar, alternate A, or pop your hand up.
I got a question. It's not exactly related to an operating system, but it could be used with this operating system. We're always getting bamboozled trying to send, we still have to send SMTP emails from our transmitter sites, right? We still need to get those notifications. We're always having to deal with the hassle of something getting blocked by Google or whatever. We set up our own server. Any great ideas or simplistic servers to set up? There are a lot of freeware versions. Maybe BlueOnyx has something.
Yes, we do. But maybe Chris wants to answer this one.
Sure, I'll give it a good college try here. One of the neat things about BlueOnyx is, as I was mentioning earlier, it has so many things that are all rolled up into a single interface. We've been talking a lot about the web side of that, but as Michael displayed earlier, there's also a very capable email component to that, which provides SMTP and POP IMAP service that would absolutely fill that need if you wanted to set up a either an on-site or in the cloud mail server that you control. It's completely standards based. You don't have to learn anything in particular. I'm not going to tell you that email is easy. Email is, there are a lot of places for email to break. But in terms of configuring your server and making something work for you, our corporate email has been based on a BlueOnyx server for years and years. We use that for remote monitoring, just as you suggested, from alerts from remote sites around the world. As well as, I mean, that's what I'm getting my email on with push notifications. While we're talking about the email, it's also a great way to bring your email in-house. There are a lot of folks who are less and less comfortable these days with having their email hosted At any of the big commercial or free mail providers. The fact is that data is ripe for mining, and maybe we don't know exactly what's happening with that storage. Placing it on your own server really takes those questions away and doesn't really hamper you in any way, since you still have a full standards-based email server for incoming and outgoing mail. It absolutely works well with mobile devices. There is a webmail component that can be installed so that you can check that email from any web browser. So it really opens you up. I know that's a little more than what you asked, but kind of tipped me off there.
Well, thank you.
You bet.
We do know that this is an issue with Gmail and Yahoo, and especially right now. I find, for instance, in this minor thing, but just to give you an example of what's happening, for probably 20 years, if I'm going to send an email to somebody, I'm going to send that email to them by pulling up an old one and then send again. Gmail blocks it. It says 2 message IDs when 1 is expected. The next question, of course, comes with places like Yahoo or AOL. If somebody unsubscribes from a mailing list by marking it as spam, which happens every so often, Yahoo starts delaying. Some of you are on my Tuesday reminder list, and I have come to find out you get the reminder of today's Thursday gathering on Saturday. You can thank Yahoo for that. So, Chris, you have, I know, become a host for several of our readers on the BDR and oldradio.com. And over the years, I have not heard any of them complain to me about your service, but that you help them to get it set up and you help them keep it running. And that's really what we all want to see.
Well, I come from a tech background. I've worked in the broadcast industry. I've worked in the live sound industry, and I've always felt that the best compliment for me doing my job is when everybody completely forgets about me. So what we really try to do is get you set up, get you running, and then get out of the way. We're here for you when you have a question, but hopefully we're not going to induce something that's going to cause you to start harping on us.
And that's the way it should be. Any other questions? It's been pretty quiet, the chat box. Seems like you guys have answered almost all the questions that folks have. I can tell you that I'm running, 6 or 8 domains on my server. And I have no collisions. I have no problems. I would probably like to upgrade to your latest version, Michael. I'm afraid the problem is with Mailman, which is
absolutely
a real mess these days.
It is. And I'm still looking for some kind of alternative. But even if Mailman 3 were available on Enterprise Linux 9, you can't directly import from Mailman 2 into Mailman 3. It's not that clean. So I'm not sure what these guys are doing. That's not how I would run an open source project.
Well, that's the issue, isn't it? It's open source, and you got to get the right kind of guys. Earlier last year, I guess it was, I introduced to some of you Quick Basic QB64, a current version of Quick Basic that has been expanded. Well, the team broke up, and QB64.com and QB64.org have nothing to do with each other. That's not what you want to see. But no. Michael and Chris have worked together for many years and continue to do so.
Absolutely. And That is something that's also important in an open source project, that you have a group of people who can work well together, and even if we not always agree on everything, we still deal with all the minor dissent that sometimes arises in a very mature and adult fashion. For example, it's not that long ago that one of the co-developers came to me with an idea which I thought, he's not here, I may say it, I thought the idea was not that intelligent. And I didn't.
It's a very diplomatic way to say it.
Yeah, and so I slept the night over it, arranged my arguments, and made a very polite and precise point, explaining why I rather would not like to do that. And the person accepted my explanation, possibly didn't like it, but it's the way it is. We are still good friends. We are working together, no problems at all. And it has been that way since the project started. People are still there. Everybody's working together, and we are constantly delivering new features, new updates, enhancements for BlueOnyx. We plan to do so for many more years.
One of the great things that was done, I think, from the outset of creating the BlueOnyx team is there are people involved on the daily team who are interacting with one another from different facets of the BlueOnyx ecosystem. So you've got Michael, who is a very esteemed developer. I come from a hosting, commercial hosting business background. Greg is also a developer. We have other data center and hosting service operators. We have had hardware sellers, certainly in the past. So I think having that variety of folks involved who come from the different backgrounds, we can all sort of bring something unique to the table, and that really helps give a very rounded view when we're talking about features to implement or what we want to be supporting.
To be inclusive, I know that BlueOnyx comes in several languages.
And absolutely. It was very early on that, or let me put it this way, the original Cobalt developers developed the interface in English, in Japanese, and another language. I don't recall which one it was. And they are using a standard getText implementation, which is used in many different Unix or Linux applications. So you have IDs which represent a larger text in different languages. And these files can be exported, can be edited in a text editor, and you can run them through a translator as well, which is what we did. And then add it as a new language to BlueOnyx. So initially we had somebody who did a Danish translation. Denmark is a very small country in the north of Europe, or north of Germany. And there was a big hosting provider who absolutely wanted BlueOnyx in Danish, and he did the entire translation. Splendid. So I integrated it. A bit later, somebody said, hey, let's do French. I said, I don't speak French. Yeah, okay, I do, he said, and he started the translation, got about 80%, and then gave up. And the guy from Switzerland, from the Swiss part of Switzerland, from the French part of Switzerland, French-speaking part, he continued it, and we integrated that. A bit later, Spanish. We added Spanish. Same story. Halfway through, the person gave up because it's a lot of text. And at that point, I automated it via Google Translate, via the Google Translate API. I fed it the English sources, and it spit out an automatic translation of the GUI interface in the languages that I wanted. So right now we are supporting 9 different languages, which is at times a bit boring for me, because when I add just one text box in the GUI interface, I have to do the translation into 8 different languages, English, and then 8 additional languages. And Typically, it's the description of the text field, the help text, error messages, everything has to be translated. So adding a small feature to the GUI interface also involves a lot of textual changes. But it's halfway automated, the translation, and that makes BlueOnyx accessible to a lot of people who are not that fluent in English. We also have a very large user base still in Japan, because one of the previous developers was from Japan. And apparently they are still happy with the machine translation into Japanese, which I believe is probably pretty horrible.
Michael, I have a question here from David Klon. But first, I'm going to ask you, do you ever sleep?
Yes, but recently, typically 5 hours.
You seem around the clock. I see your postings, and
yeah, at the moment it's a bit more complicated, not only because of BlueOnyx, but we're also involved in a house building project with the entire family. So that keeps me up as well.
Michael says he sleeps about 5 hours. He doesn't say that those 5 hours are consecutive.
There you go. David asks you, Chris, can you please summarize some differences between your hosting service and other large hosting services like DigitalOcean and Linode?
Sure, I can try to take a stab at that. I'll start by saying that hosting is a commodity. Great web hosting is available almost anywhere you look. So I'm certainly not here to bash any of the competitors or speak ill of them. I'm sure that they do a great job. We are a boutique. We are not looking. I've never had designs to out GoDaddy. That's not what we're about. In the same respect that if you need the Walmart experience and all that entails, then that's absolutely a great choice for you. That's not us. We operate as a boutique operator, which means that we generally get to know our customers a little bit better. We can offer custom solutions. We can make exceptions to a package or customizations to a package. And I think above all else that when you have the need for support, you're going to hear from one of about half a dozen of our folks on the team over here. You're never going to get bounced around to a well-meaning but perhaps difficult to understand or deal with overseas team. Everything that we do is based right out of our headquarters outside of Dallas, Texas.
And you've got some really great support folks there too, Chris. Daryl, for one, and every time I've asked a question, man, he knows.
For sure, we've got a very, very good dedicated team of techs and also in the accounts department. We're blessed with great people.
That's your mother, isn't it?
Mother has just recently retired, which breaks everybody's heart, mine included.
Michael, you started to say something.
That is one of the points. Over the 20 years that I've been in business, I've had clients who initially were running on the Cobalts or servers or on the Blue Quartz or BlueOnyx, one of these solutions that we used to work with. And they started going to the clouds, the big ones. Yeah, may that be Amazon or whoever else. I wish them well. And eventually, with a couple of them, I touched base again in the future, or we crossed paths. And the experience is different because for Amazon, you're just a number. They don't care. All they want to know is your credit card number, and if the card is good. Anything else, tough luck. And when you are dealing with companies like Chris, there's always this personal touch. You're talking to a real person. You get the support you need when you need it. They're always there, and you don't have to escalate things through different levels of support until you get somebody who really knows what he needs to do to get you out of the bend. And with Chris, you always have the direct line. Either the technician who you're talking to, or if you're talking directly to Chris, everything's great. Technicians are top-notch. That is an experience that is pretty hard to beat. Yes, you can get maybe hosting cheaper somewhere else, but better, I don't think so.
Thanks,
Chris,
Michael.
David says, excellent summary, just what I was interested in hearing. Thanks.
Perfect. Awesome. Great.
So that's good. Reiner Johnson asks you if you could go into more depth, a solution for what Blue can do to solve the email alarm issue that's no longer available from transmitter devices like broadcast tools. I think a large part of that is that Google now requires 2FA, is it?
Okay. So a BlueOnyx email account really just needs username and password authentication. There are other options and alternatives to be sure, but even ourselves, we're running building management interfaces, temperature controls, door alarms, that sorts of thing in a building that was installed quite some time ago, HVAC controls and monitoring. And all of those tie back into the BlueOnyx email system with no problems at all.
That answer you, Reiner?
I think so. So, Chris, basically you're self-serving. You're not using an outside like AOL or something. AOL or.
Yeah, for sure. That's absolutely true. We're running our own email server. And in our case, the same server that we are sending that message through is the server that is delivering the message to my email client or my phone, what have you. But absolutely, there's no reason if you have a Gmail account or an AOL account, there's no reason that you could not forward that through the BlueOnyx server.
In fact, the GUI interface for each individual user account has the option to forward a copy of the message or the entire message to one or more third parties. And a lot of our users are using that to receive emails on the BlueOnyx and forward it after spam filtering, stuff like that, to their AOL or Gmail or Yahoo accounts. That is always an option.
Yes, you could set up several users, one, let's say, programming, one tech, and you could choose who you want to forward to.
And another, just to tag on to that, another option would be the use of what BlueOnyx refers to as email aliases. So if you're call it a mom and pop shop, and you wear several hats, but maybe you won't always wear several hats, or maybe you just don't want to advertise that you're wearing several hats. You may be sales at, you may be support at, and you may be Chris at, whatever your domain might be. You can stack all of those aliases onto a single account, and then you don't have to set up separate accounts in every email software that you own. It'll all funnel to the same inbox.
Chris Hayes, are you talking about BlueOnyx as a webmail support?
Yes, you know how sometimes you're somewhere where you're not at your computer and you'd like to use a web browser to get into your email. Is that supported?
Yes, it is. There's a package in our shop which costs around $15. It's called Roundcube, which is a web-based email client. It looks a bit from the theming and styling like the Outlook, so people should be relatively familiar with how it works. And you can access it from anywhere where you have internet access in the browser. You log in with your username and password. and you have all the emails at your fingertip.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Roundcube. Thanks.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions, folks?
I'm looking at your download page,
Mhm.
trying to figure out if I was starting off with a bare metal box,
Yes.
what would be the steps that I would need?
Okay. On the download page, when you scroll down, there's a entry called ISO images.
Download page. Find that.
It's below one of the donate buttons.
Would you like to bring that up, Michael?
Yes, let me bring that up. Here we go. I hope you can see that.
Yes.
And these are the download mirrors where you can go and download the ISO images. And there are several entries here. This one, BlueOnyx 5211R, Alma Linux 9.1.ISO, 2 gigabytes. That is the ISO image that you would need to download for the latest BlueOnyx version. If you use a virtual server installation, most virtual server management programs like VirtualBox or VMware allow you to directly install off an ISO image. The other option is you could burn it to a DVD, this ISO image, and use the internal or external DVD player to boot off it, and it would then bring up a menu, which, if you hit return in that menu, the disks on the server get erased and BlueOnyx gets installed. It's a process that takes about, depending on the speed, 10, 15 minutes. Then you have a fully working BlueOnyx, where you log in with the username and password shown on the display and just configure the network. Once the network settings are configured, you can do the rest of the administration via the GUI interface from your browser.
Okay, so that's Linux plus BlueOnyx.
Yes, absolutely. That's Linux plus BlueOnyx, completely pre-configured. You just need in the web-based setup to specify your own password and password for MySQL. There's a small setup GUI interface which guides you through a couple of steps. I believe it's 3 or 4 steps, and then you are absolutely ready to use it.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure from looking at the thing whether that included the BlueOnyx or you had to go out and get the Linux separate.
No, we do offer that as well. Sometimes people rent a VPS at one hoster and it has already CentOS or Alma Linux or Rocky Linux pre-installed. Then yes, you can install BlueOnyx on top of that. But that involves about 3-4 commands that you need to run on the command line. We do have a guide for that on our BlueOnyx page as well. The easiest way usually is use the ISO image, or let me go back on the download page. We do have so-called virtual appliance VMware or VirtualBox disk images. That is a condensed virtual disk exported from a hosting solution for VPSs. So you could use VirtualBox, create a blank virtual server, and point it to this virtual hard disk that you downloaded from this page. And that would give you a pre-configured BlueOnyx ready to run. The only thing you would need to configure would be the network settings.
Give that a try.
Okay. If you have any questions about it, via the BlueOnyx page or the BlueOnyx mailing list, you can always reach either me or somebody else who would be happy to help you along if you have any questions or problems.
Thanks.
And if you're interested, here is what Roundcube looks like.
That's the old version.
Oh, oops. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
The new version is actually even nicer than that. And there have been occasions where I've been forced to switch desks. I have to leave all of this behind and maybe go to a single screen or a dual screen setup out in the bullpen. And I have found that opening my Roundcube webmail in the browser is almost just as good as using my dedicated email client. It's gotten really good.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe I have to talk to you about that, Chris.
We could probably figure something out.
All right. Any other questions? We've held these gentlemen for an hour so far. Any other questions before we let them go? And I think you guys have explained it very, very well. And I'm hoping that more than a few of our viewers, we have some 60 some here between the Zoom and the YouTube. I hope more than a few will check out BlueOnyx and give it a run.
Barry, gentlemen, many thanks for giving us a chance to present BlueOnyx to you. It was a pleasure. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Chris, thank you.
You bet. Had a great time with everybody today.
David Stewart says thank you. Hal Hostetler says thank you. Oh, we got lots of good comments here in the chat box. A lot of folks. Thanks again.